stink eye. We try our best, and we're successful. Come watch our show. Bet River sponsors. It's time to start. Enjoy the show.
Welcome in, everyone, to a new week of Betting Weekly Live. I hope you were doing really well. Let us know how you got on at the weekend with your betting in whatever sports. You with Steve Wyss and Doug Kezirian today. Doug, I was hoping you might be Gandalf the Great this Monday after our talk last week. How has it been going for you overall the last, 4 or 5 days?
Yeah, to be honest, it was more getting itchy than it was. I was on an absolute cold streak. I went 2-3 on Friday, so actually it's a win for everyone. To be honest, I can shave and everything. But it was a nice week, great week actually. But by no means it was ice cold or anything like that. Just nice to get back to the normal day-to-day routine. And when you work from home, also, Steve, it's getting out of the house. Shaving. These are important things to do to break up the monotony of things. So this is, again, a giant win for everyone.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I work from home and I've been getting out into a few gym sessions recently. I feel like some of my best ideas when I'm swimming or in the sauna or something, thinking about things. But welcome in, everyone. Nick Mace, Ming Chung, ZT. Welcome into the chat. Not seen you before. But welcome, great to see you. Giannetti, Rick Haley, Villa fan. Rich, if anyone wondering about the Premier League show, I think that is going to be released very, very soon, probably in about an hour's time, with Jack, Nigel, and Dan. Rick Haley, my usual bet, winning the Yorkie game 0-0 at half-time. It was a mixed weekend for me. I had some good results. Brest was excellent for me. Athletic Bilbao did let me down in the Spanish La Liga yesterday. I was disappointed in them. Notable winners and losers on the soccer this weekend. Borussia Dortmund, $20,000 play on the -1 Asian handicap. That was a winner against Mainz. I couldn't be placing $20,000 on Borussia Dortmund. Not a very trustworthy team, but it worked out for that particular bettor. There was also $20,000 in the Bundesliga. Bayern Munich sent Pauli over 10.5 corners live. That was a loser, unfortunately. A big loser in the NCAA, Alabama +8 against Duke. I hope that wasn't your money, Doug. That one didn't go down well. But in general, some good winners. 20,000 on Auburn, money line against Michigan State in that Duke game. $25,000 on Duke on the money line. Someone managed to grab Florida live on the money line against Texas Tech at +360. Nearly $7,000 play on that. And an interesting golf winner, Minwoo Lee, to win the Houston Open, came in at 50-1. Someone had nearly $400 on Minwoo Lee. So that has really paid out nicely for that bettor. Got plenty to discuss today with Doug on the show. We're going to be talking about the Final Four in the NCAA. We've also got Doug to go through the NBA card and pick out his best bets for Monday. I am going to start with a little bit of soccer play. Might be a bit of bonus Swedish Allsvenskan talk at the bottom of the show if we have a bit of time. But there is some significant action going on in Europe today. We've got Serie A matches there. LS Verona against Palmas, the early kickoff. Lazio against Torino and Celta Vigo against Las Palmas. Now, I would like to point everyone in the direction of the Betting Weekly Extra Time European show. We've talked about all of these 3 games. I put the link in there from 44 minutes onwards, roughly. Me and James Easton and Dan Roebuck, we actually slightly disagree in that Parma game. He likes the over, I like the under. We think that Torino could be a possible play against an overrated Lazio. I say my best bet of the day would come in that Celta Vigo game against Las Palmas. I like the goals, over 2.5 goals, -124 with Bet Rivers. I think it's a really good bet. Based on how we've seen both teams play this season. Celta Vigo winless. Las Palmas are winless since the 22nd of December. They have no confidence whatsoever, no clean sheets in that period. Celta Vigo have been a strong over team this season. Their goals per game average at 2.9. That's the 5th most in La Liga. known for their general attacking style. They should win the game against Las Palmas, but for me, the goals is often the better way there. And the house special, not the house special, I'll come to that in a minute. The split on this game, 97% of the money is for Celta Vigo. 83% of the money on the over-under line is on the over. We've got house specials on baseball today. Do check those out. So yeah, there's 3 of those. I might come back to them later if we do have a bit of time. But Doug, we've got you. I mean, last week you've been actually in great form on Betting Weekly Live. I think your run extended to something like 9-0 at one point. There was some great stuff, NBA, March Madness, and incredibly, I mean, Bet Rivers we talk about house specials. They were offering up this carrot right throughout March Madness of the top 4 teams to make the Final Four. I think it was at plus 600 at one point. How normal is this to actually happen? We've got the matches coming up in a few days' time. Florida, Auburn, Houston, Duke. The 4 top seeds in the Final Four. Is this rare? Did you expect it? What are your thoughts?
A little bit of everything, right? So it's obviously rare statistically because it's just the second time it's ever happened, right? You don't name an event March Madness and have chalk all the way through across the board. It just doesn't work like that. That's why it's called Madness, and hence the chaos we typically see. And frankly, looking back, we were likely going to have a little bit of chaos. Florida was down double digits with a couple minutes to go. They were plus 1,100 on the money line. So everyone forgetting that and just saying, oh, this is the future, blah, 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 forgets that a lot of these teams were on the ropes. Purdue and Houston, obviously very close down the stretch. And then even along the way, Florida was minus an underdog on the live line in the second round against UConn with a few minutes to go as well. So upsets were there, just not as many, but there were certainly the top seeds were on the ropes a couple times along the way. And even Duke had some stretches there where they were even in a nail-biter situation throughout the tournament. Now, with that being said, and this is where, in my opinion, TV networks get it wrong, is that they should really use betting as an analytic, as a measure of things, as a predictive, not the end all be all, but something that guides us, because all season, or at least maybe in the calendar year, the college basketball season has become slowly but surely very top heavy. This was a unique year in that the dominant teams were looking like they were in a different tier. If you looked at the futures market, this is what I was talking about, the analytics, you had a situation where there were 4 or 5 teams that were in that single digit range, and then a giant drop off to the double digits, but more like the 15, the 18 to 1s. So the fact that the futures market indicated it was a certain, like a 3-horse race, 4-horse race or whatnot, it showed that this could be a year where we were going to get chalk. And it looked that way going into the tournament, where there were 2 minus money favorites to reach the region, to reach the Final Four. Typically, we don't see that. Maybe we see 1, but after like a couple games, we had 3 minus monies and then 1 that was like plus 110. So it looked like it was going to unfold that way from January on. And that's not always the case. So the futures market can be an indication just by comparative. 2 years ago or a year ago, if I can't remember, but in general, the NBA can be really top heavy, right? When Kevin Durant went to the Warriors, they were minus money to win the NBA title at the beginning of the season because it's a best of 7 series, so you get a truer outcome. The NBA has rarely had a favorite that's, longer odds than like 2 to 1. It's usually like plus 180, going back to the Kobe and Shaq days, and then even the Spurs, and then before that, the Lakers and Celtics in the 80s. So the NBA has had much more parity because of the futures market. So the futures market can indicate in a lot of ways what you're going to have. In the NBA, you had 6 teams a couple years ago that had odds of 8 to 1 or less. So knowing it's a way to sort of look at the futures market to kind of see how things are going to unfold, not just the point spread. You can look at the futures market to see sort of the breakdown of the tiers. Now, I know that was a long-winded answer, but I just don't think it's a sign of things to come necessarily. Just because of this one year we had chalk all the way through, it certainly was not as simple as it sounds. We all think things are a straight line. It certainly wasn't. We definitely almost had some crooked numbers on the seeding line in the Final Four.
Yeah, I was following this tournament, and some of these teams that are in the Final Four, went to overtime, was certainly pushed. At times, looked like going out. So I think 16-1. ZT put in the chat here. That was apparently the odds, probably pre-tournament. I'm guessing ZT.
Right. It was,
which is about right, isn't it? And they're probably with the same next season. Doesn't really affect it. A couple saying here that the nil or NIL has killed the madness. I keep thinking 0-0 here in terms of football, so I don't know what that means, Doug. But I'm guessing some sort of authority.
It's the name, image, and likeness. The college players are now receiving money. It's basically they got a pay raise. Before they were getting free tuition, room and board, things like that. Now they still receive that, and they got an increase in money. They got actual money. And there's a bidding war. I don't think the NIL is really to blame. It's the transfer portal. Players can now transfer from one school to another without having to sit out. So the NIL affects high schoolers, but there's a lot of mid-majors that recruit well. We saw Florida Atlantic go to the Final Four a couple of years ago, but they lost all their three best players to power programs. So it's really the ability to transfer to a bigger school with NIL, of course, more money, but if it was just NIL, I don't think we'd see all these transfers leave these mid majors because they don't want to sit out a year. So to me, the recruiting's better, obviously, with the NIL, but I think the transfer portal is more to blame, so to speak. But we'll see. Let's let it play out. I believe in the invisible hand. Stuff sort of works itself out. It takes some time. We're maybe in the breaking of the eggs to make the omelet phase, but again. We were very, very, very close to having not all one seed. So let's not overreact too much.
Just looking through the comments now. Joe Bamber, Bilbao were very disappointing yesterday. Brest, that was one of my better picks. Duncan, thank you very much. Sheffield did deliver on Friday. Dave Clark's on FC Copenhagen today in the Danish league. Effie Briofsky, both teams have scored yes. And Celta, team total over 1.5 goals. That's the is that similar to Dan Roebuck's bet on Friday, the new Dan Roebuck signature bet that we've got? Ginepi thinks Torino can punch back against a team that really wants to play like Lazio, so he's gone both teams to score. Yes, Nish also similar with the Celta match. And Nish says, cheers, Doug, a few good winners at the weekend based on your chats. Very much appreciated. You have been in some great form on Betting Weekly Live. So yeah, I'm just looking now at the futures market, and Duke are the favourites to win this thing. -110, Florida +250, Houston +400, and Auburn at +450 there. I mean, from what everyone's saying, what I'm hearing, Duke are the outstanding side. We'll might as well talk about that match first, because we're going to get your thoughts on things here. What might be a potential bet, what might not be. Houston Duke here, -4.5 on the point spread. Is that fair, do you think? And we've got quite a low points total, 136.5. I mean, you mentioned Houston's defense is excellent. I'm guessing that's probably why that is. What are your thoughts on the game?
Yes, a couple reasons for this. We just saw Duke face Alabama, and it took the air out of the ball with about 8 minutes to go in the game because they didn't want to get into an up and down game. And frankly, the previous game, the Blue Devils did not have a ton of fast break points. And then also in these tournaments, you have to remember some of these games have a quick turnaround of 48 hours. So from Thursday to Saturday or Friday to Sunday versus the preparation now we get all the way for a full week in Duke's case. So I think Duke's a good, really, really, really good bet because John Shire's an excellent, excellent coach. And he's going to scheme as 6 days to scheme here against Houston's top-ranked defense, and the X's and O's and the execution of this team with it's so crisp on offense. I think not that they're going to blow them out necessarily because Houston obviously has a legitimate defense, but I think the Blue Devils are going to be so well prepared and be able to offset Houston's physicality and things like that. And score more easily than they would maybe in a 48-hour turnaround. So I'm back in Shire here, and Duke's defense is very underrated. They're going to be set in the half court, and every year Houston has been eliminated. Kelvin Sampson's a fantastic coach, and every year they've been eliminated because the offense has done them in at some point, and they can go quiet for stretches. Now, that didn't happen against Tennessee. They hit their shots, but against Purdue, it did. They were up 10 with about 8 minutes to go or so, 6 minutes ago, and all of a sudden it's a tie game, and they almost lost, right? They got an offensive rebound and won it right before regulation. Sampson's fantastic, but I do think this Cougars offense can go silent against good defensive teams. We didn't see it against Tennessee, but I think John Shire and Duke will have the right game plan for a Houston offense that is certainly susceptible to cold shooting and cold stretches. So I'm going to back the Blue Devils. I really think it shapes up well. They're an excellent team. In my eyes, they're the best team in the country. I had them winning it all since it began. And Cooper Flagg's the best player in the country, and he did look fatigued in the second half the other day, and I think he subbed out at about 5 minutes into the second half or so. But again, 6 days off, he'll be fresh, he'll be sharp. Houston, I do like the under a little bit. I think it's going to be much more of a half-court game. Duke does not want to run with the athletes of the Cougars, and I think Houston's defense, and I think Duke's going to strategize against them, but I don't think they're going to score at will. So I really like the under in that game as well.
Say Duke minus 110 to win the whole thing. If they make the final of this, what will their odds be on the money line, do you think?
So in terms of point spread, if they play Auburn, you're looking at about a 2.5 point spread. And if they play Florida, it's going to be about 1. Now, that can change depending on, of course, an injury, but also depending how teams look. If Florida blows out Auburn, then it might be pick 'em, right, against Duke, if Duke struggles to escapes a win or something like that with Houston. So I would not play the minus 110. I don't think there's value there. You got to win 2 games. It's a 2-game money line parlay. The line could be, they could be like minus 140 in the championship game. So I don't see why making them win as a 4.5 point favorite just to lower it to minus 110 makes a ton of sense. Frankly, there'll be an NBA game with a team that's tanking having to lose. You can just add the other team's money line on it with Duke money line on the next Monday night and have the same sort of minus 110 payout of Duke on the money line. So there's no way right now I would bet the Blue Devils at this current price to win the championship.
But you are going to bet the minus 4.5 against Houston there. You said right from one of the early live shows we did that your predicted final was going to be Duke against Florida. These Gators have been riding their luck a little bit, a few tense games, but they are in the Final Four. Maybe the best is yet to come from them. Maybe they can peak in these final 2 games. They've got a match against Auburn now, minus 2.5 favorites here on the spread. So it's pretty close. Minus 150 on the money line and a much higher total points line here at 160.5. All things pointing towards quite a close game, Doug, in terms of the points, maybe high scoring as well, possible shootout. What do you think here?
So these teams obviously are both from the SEC. Florida won at Auburn during the regular season, and that was when I wouldn't say Florida was peaking, but there were a couple stretches where both Auburn and Florida may have peaked a little too early. That would be my concern for both of these teams. But the Gators, so I'm not terribly shocked they struggled against UConn. Again, that was a 48-hour turnaround, and Danny Hurley, 2-time defending champ, he's an excellent coach. So I was okay with that. They got their scare. The Texas Tech game was interesting because the Gators looked out of sorts. They looked rattled until Walter Clayton Jr. started hitting some threes. In fact, some of their bigs started hitting threes, but the Florida bigs played, off balance. The physicality got to them, and they were a little too thin and weak, if you will, for lack of a better word, in the post. And the Texas Tech physicality was able to control the boards and things along those lines. And I'm not sure the Tigers play that way. I'm not saying Tigers are finesse, but they don't want to muck it up in the paint, which is what was giving Florida problems. Janai Broome is an agile player who can stretch out to the 3-point line. And some of the other bigs, I think it'll be a really well-played game. And it's interesting, both these coaches know each other quite well. Todd Golden, the head coach of the Gators, used to be an assistant under Bruce Pearl back in the day, and they were on each other's staff in the Maccabee games as well. So there's a familiarity for sure that goes beyond just playing in the same conference during the regular season. These guys know each other well. Todd Golden's a good coach, definitely analytically driven, given his coaching pedigree. But Pearl will have these guys ready. It's going to come down to the wire. Honestly, it's a total coin flip. Like I said, Florida won earlier in terms of the regular season meeting on the Plains, and I'm just not going to put a ton of stock because I think the Gators are playing really well that time of year, and they kind of had a couple teams' numbers, and that's why they won the conference title. But that doesn't mean that Auburn can't win. I guess I would lean to the dog just because I'm getting 2.5 points in what I think is a coin flip game, but I don't see real reason to see a distinct edge that would make me step up to the counter and fire here.
Just going back to some more comments here. Nish says Duke and Florida double for me. Mate SK says the Cougars to cover. They're the better team than Duke for me, says Mate SK. That's a bold statement, mate. But he also asked, do you bet on MLB, Doug, or NHL? Which is your sort of preferred sporting betting action?
So I actually bet an NHL game last night just because I have people that I talk to that I really respect. I don't think anyone can cover every single sport and bet it and know it really well and try to beat the market convincingly. Like I'm not going to come on this show and talk about soccer and talk about all these value plays because I'm just not immersed in it like I am the NBA and some of the other sports, right? In terms of baseball, I'll get into baseball. Maybe I like isolate some pitcher props or situational handicapping, things like that. It's really tough to beat because it is a math-driven sport, right? It's a one-on-one game for the most part, and it's so it's Moneyball in a lot of ways. And then the math guys shape the market in terms of the bettors, so it's really hard to feel like there's tons of betting value. But every once in a while, I'll get some good stuff comes across my desk, if you will, just talking to my colleagues and team, and then I'll have good stuff. But NHL is much rarer play than baseball. In fact, the summer I'm more focused on the WNBA. It's the right sort of dosage of games where I can have a distinct edge and win while also recharging for the football season.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. You can't be jack of all trades. You've got to be specialist in certain areas. Totally agree with that one. NBA, that has certainly been your sort of thing recently. We've got you to deliver some more picks for us here. And the Boston Celtics served you very well on the show last week. They racked up a huge win, actually, didn't they? You called that one spot on. Get on the handicap. I think there was even talk in the chat about laddering up to some big ones, and they delivered. And you're going to go with them again here, the Celtics, against these Grizzlies, -4.5 on the spread. You like the favorite once more, Doug?
Right. And it's weird because the Celtics are basically kind of locked into their playoff positioning at this point, but they've been playing really hard at the end of the season, and I couldn't say the same for the middle of the season because I think they had reached the lull, which is expected and understandable of a defending champion because you play so late into the calendar the previous season. So Boston has won, I believe, 7 straight, 13 of 14. And like we discussed last week, they're trucking team. So we discussed the Phoenix Suns game. They went over their team total, won by 30, easily covering the point spread. And I think this line tonight at Memphis, and it's 4.5 at Bet Rivers. And I just think it's too cheap for a team that has such a strong. It's up to 5 now at Bet Rivers. I stand corrected, but the Celtics have such an explosive offense, and the Grizzlies' defense is really weak. This is not the same Grizzlies teams we've seen in regular seasons and recently, where they've been one of the best ATS teams the entire year. Memphis is now sort of middle of the pack after starting out strong, whereas Boston much more reliable. And I just like teams at the end of a road trip. So Boston is wrapping up a 6-game road trip before they come home. That's usually when teams sort of run through the tape. On top of that, they lost to Memphis earlier this season. Celtics don't like getting swept. And so I expect them to be particularly motivated for this game, not over the top motivated, but motivated. And like I said about Memphis, they fired their coach last week out of nowhere. They've been a disappointment, sort of sneaky disappointment. Get this, since February 2nd, which is almost 2 months, they are 11-4 against teams with losing records. Against teams that have a winning record, 0-10.
Wow.
This is not a good Memphis team now. Morant's back. They're that's their best player, or maybe second best player next to Jaren Jackson Jr. But the Memphis defense stinks. They have a new coach. They just lost to the Lakers with the new coach. They just give up too many points. So I'll probably play some Boston team total first half and game over. I think the Celtics offense, for example, Boston was just trucking San Antonio, and then Spurs somehow backdoor covered in a high scoring game. So Boston may take its foot off the gas, but you're not laying 12.5 like you were against the Spurs here. You're only laying 5 now. And I agree with the line move. It's gone from 4.5 to 5. I like the Celtics. It's a TNT national televised game. I think Boston's offense is too crisp, too potent, and there's just going to be open shooters all day. Like I said, against Phoenix, when you play bad defense against the Celtics, you're doomed because they have 5 shooters and they can all make 3-pointers.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like the sound of these Grizzlies from a betting perspective. They beat teams that they should beat, and they lose to teams that they should lose against. As simple as that, by the sounds of it. No one's betting on them here. 99% of the money on the money line is on the Celtics. 78% of the money on the spread is on the Celtics. So, yeah, there's sometimes the obvious bet is the best bet, and the Celtics served you really well last week. So we go in them again there, -4.5. Let's move to Heat at Wizards here. -8.5 favorite here, -114. We've got 216.5 points line for this game, and -345 on the money line. Another match. You like the favorite, Doug?
I do. And this is the time of year where I think it's really hard for the betting market, the math guys and everything, and even odds makers to really fully appreciate and understand what's going on. So this line opens 6.5, got bet to 7, got bet to 7.5, got bet to 8, and now 8.5. And there's some 9s popping up. And the reason I did each of those half points, because it wasn't like one big announcement, some guy who was supposed to be out is now playing or vice versa, where they just moved it from 6.5 to 8.5. Oh no, it went up. So it was continuously bet and it was just soft. Like I had a pro better text me yesterday and said, hey, 6.5 is really cheap. And then it moves to 7. He's like 7 still cheap. And that's because of what's on the line. So for those that are a little unfamiliar, the NBA does not have relegation like we see in soccer overseas. So what happens is the teams that are not going to the postseason go get put in a lottery where the draft picks are determined based on lottery odds, and the odds are weighted based on how bad you are. So the worst teams get a better chance to get the number 1 pick, and so forth. So Washington is legitimately incentivized to lose this game, given there's only about a couple weeks left in the regular season. And so the Wizards demonstrated that. Some of their key players are sitting. It's a problem, if you will, in the NBA, where it's lost competitiveness to a certain extent. I saw a report, an interview the other day from a former executive that said Adam Silver, the commissioner, talks to these NBA teams daily to make sure they're not intentionally losing or intentionally doing lineups. But at some point, it's better to get fined and lose the game than it is, because the potential reward, a guy like Cooper Flag, things like that, it can just turn around a franchise. So the Wizards are legitimately incentivized to lose. They are playing guys that really should not be playing in a lot of ways. Now, with that being said, Miami's on the other end of the spectrum where they actually need to win so badly. And they have turned the corner. They had lost 10 straight. They're playing a much better ball. And I just think the market doesn't really capture the essence of this game this late in the season. So the math guys bet the math, and it's just there's line value in like money line parlays, frankly, because one team's not trying to win or doesn't really want to win. Now, the players try to win. Don't get me wrong. Let me just reiterate that. The players are playing hard, trying to win. Some are chasing contracts, things like that. But the league, the team's not putting the right guys on the court, things along those lines. And the Wizards are terrible. Let's not forget the Washington's a bad basketball team. And Miami's playing better, getting a little healthier. So I'll lay the big number with the Heat as road chalk.
Yeah, 94% of the money on this -8.5 spread is on the Heat. This is a really good point. Motivation can be massive in any sport towards the end of the season. The players, I don't think many players go out there and deliberately want to lose, like you say. But deep down in the back of your mind, they know it doesn't really matter.
Right.
In some cases, obviously, those who are playing for contracts and bonuses, it's a little bit different. But it's just the same feeling isn't there. The Heat need this win. -8.5. That's the play in this game. Let's go to another big favorite here in the Nets Mavericks game. We've got a -10.5 spread.
Well, yeah, it was.
It's come in a bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's come down to 9, and I don't really understand that, but it's 9 at Bet Rivers, 9 everywhere else. Makes no sense to me. I was willing to lay the 10.5, and this is a very similar situation. Dallas needing to win to improve its playoff positioning and postseason positioning with the play-in tournament, and Brooklyn really cannot win this game. They can absolutely not. They actually played Washington, the team we just talked about, on Saturday, and Brooklyn won as a road underdog. I couldn't believe it. So what's going on with the Nets is they're sort of masking the tanking by playing 10, 11 guys during the game, because I think what they're doing in the spin zone here, they're justifying it by saying they want to know what they have at the end of the roster so they can make offseason decisions and things along those lines. So they're playing their starters. Only a couple guys are playing 27, 29 minutes, and the majority of the guys are only playing 15 minutes that should be playing 30. On top of that, they just announced recently, and this is why I'm surprised the line's staying at 9, is Cam Johnson, their best sort of available player, is out tonight. And he's a guy who I've really monitored the last month of the season. When he's out, I usually bet Nets team totals under. So I think Dallas opens up a can. Dallas just got Anthony Davis back, the guy who was involved in the Luka Doncic trade. He's been out, and they're 3-0 with him in the lineup. He's not playing back-to-back nights, but they didn't play yesterday, so he's going to start and play about 30 minutes. And they're getting a little healthier across the board. PJ Washington's going to start as well. I think they absolutely destroyed the Nets. For example, Brooklyn just got a guy in the G League. They signed him, Drew Timme. You might remember from college basketball at Gonzaga. He's awful. He can't jump over a phone book. And he's going to try to protect the rim against some of the, he has no business being out there. He does some nice things. He's a smart player, whatever. Nice, fun college player. Has no business getting 25, 30 minutes in an NBA game, and especially guarding or having to defend Anthony Davis and things like that. It should be a blowout, and I'll lay it. And again, this is when money line parlays do have line value. I do think the Nets need to lose, and I think the Mavs really want to win. So I don't think you can make the money line large enough, commensurate with the 9-point spread. So there's value in these. When you have value on the money line, parlays are okay.
Yeah, definitely. I like the sound of this as well. -9 you can get on them. So
yeah,
if we've
got
road
favorites for you, what could go wrong, right?
Yeah, if we've got players on the pitch or court, that they're not good enough, really, then we've got to take advantage of it. This happens in a lot of sports towards the end of seasons, where players are tested or just given run-outs, things like that, and it's certainly in our interest to profit on them. There's one other NBA game you're going to talk about here: Utah Jazz against the Hornets. Now, the actual spread here is -2, so it should be quite a close game. We've got a points total at 219.5. I can tell you on that over-under split, 81% of the money is actually on the under in this game, Doug, but we're not interested in that as much. It's player props that you've got your eye on in this game. What are you looking at?
This is an awful game. I would not wish watching this game on my worst enemy. I really would not. So Utah was actually a road favorite overnight, and I tweeted about it. It was so shocking. They over -1 on the overnight line. They are now a 2-point underdog, which makes sense on the line move. Utah is really thin. They just lost by 40-something in their last game. They have the worst record in the entire league, and it looks like they're sitting some guys. Now, because they have the worst record and the way the standings are, they're basically locked in to have one of the 3 best chances to get the top overall pick. So they don't really need to lose. It's not 100% locked in, but they're not going to close the game on a season out on a 6-0 run or something. So they're fine. They don't need to lose, but they're just sitting a bunch of guys. So their 2 best bigs, Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen, are not going to play tonight. One's got sickness, the other one's conditioning issues. So they're going to play a guy named Oscar Tshiebwe, who was excellent in college, but he's not good. So Charlotte has a center. He used to play at Duke. He plays now for the Hornets. He's Mark Williams, and he sat out yesterday because of rest. So he's going to play, and he'll be an absolute beast on the board. So I think he's going to eat and rebound because both these teams are going to miss a lot of shots. So I do like over 10.5 rebounds for Mark Williams in a player prop. When he's engaged and plays, he can get like 15 rebounds. So I think he's going to have his way on the glass because the Jazz starting center, Walker Kessler, is excellent at rebounding. He's a monster of a guy, more than most centers, and he's out. So I just think Mark Williams will have plenty of opportunity. I just think it's going to be one of these ugly games where he's just going to get a bunch of rebounds. I also like Filipowski to have a big game for Utah, but I don't think there's any real good props there. I think it's a fascinating game from a handicapping standpoint. Just odds. I like betting into situations where odds makers are miserable. Like I don't think there's a tight market here. Odds makers want both teams full strength, both teams incentivized to win, like a Sunday night football game, Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles -3, 3.5 at home. That's what odds makers want. Both starting quarterbacks healthy because they're going to get two-way action, have a tight market, and the number's going to be right, and they're going to get a bunch of money coming in on both sides and make their hold percentage. But when there's like 4 starters out for one team, Charlotte's best player, LaMelo Ball, out for the season. Brandon Miller, second best player, is out for the season. Miles Bridges is their third best player, and he guns a lot. So it's just I don't think the house has an advantage in this game. Now, the difference is I don't think the players do necessarily. So that's why the books put out these two-way lines overnight, because they're getting two-way action. And I mentioned the Heat game went from 6.5 to 7 to 7. It's like, yeah, but they were taking limit bets overnight. Wasn't that much damage or risk to the house. So now they know the true lines in that Heat game around 8.5, and they're going to get a lot of action throughout the day, and they'll see what happens. But odds makers are very, nervous, or at least cautious, putting up numbers for these games. And that goes for a prop bet. So I think there's an edge here with Mark Williams. I think he's got a great opportunity to just have double-digit rebounds and go over 10.5.
Yeah, I love these analogies where, I do it myself. I say to people, don't watch this game. It's going to be awful. But I can't help myself watching it because sometimes there is more potential in these games from a betting perspective than, like you say, a big showdown. Sunday night football, Cowboys or Eagles, because there can be more uncertainty. But Mark Williams, that's the player prop there, over 10.5 rebounds. Before we go, I did promise I would mention the Swedish Allsvenskan games. These kick off in about an hour and a half time, the first round of the season. And I like under goals in both these games today, especially in the GAIS against AIK match. Under 2.25 goals can be backed at -121. The manager of AIK, 14 out of 19 games since he took over midway through last season have gone under 2.5 goals. That is the key stat. Very defensive style and rigid discipline system. 3 men at the back. I think there's actually going to be a 0-0 in one of these two games. So I've actually personally backed no goal scorer in both of these, 10-1 and at +750 for the GAIS AIK game. The Varnamo game against Sirius there. The actual stadium has only just been approved yesterday to be allowed to host the match. The actual pitch is normally atrocious. It's like a potato field. Often games get cancelled here due to waterlogging, things like that. But it does get go ahead. Often promotes poor quality soccer and under goals. So I'm not expecting many goals in the Swedish games today. So do look towards the unders there. Doug, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. And who's going to win it? March Madness. They call it March Madness, but it finishes in April. Is that the maddest part of it? But who's going to win the whole thing?
I'm going to. How can I go off what I've predicted? Duke over Auburn in the championship. Duke over Florida, in the championship game. So I do think Duke's the best team. I do think they're going to win. I think what's under the radar with Cooper Flagg and the brand name is how good of a coach John Shire is. He really is. And in the past couple of years, we saw UConn win coming from the Big East, which was not necessarily a great conference, but you can still have the best team from a relatively weak conference or a subpar conference or not the best conference. There's different definitions of the best conference. So the ACC was exposed this year in the NCAA tournament, but I don't think that's an indictment on Duke. They just happened to play in the ACC, and they were trucking teams by 20 plus. So it's not like they were escaping victory in a bad conference. They were every bit the part of their brand name indicates. I think they'll cut down the nets. They are very well coached and have a ton of talent and play good defense. I think their D is underrated. So I'll go with the Blue Devils. Nothing is going to get me off that. As much as I need to shower picking Duke because they're like the Yankees. They're fun to bet against, and you don't want to root for them unless you're a fan. I do think when it comes to money, I'm a bigger fan of my wallet than I am my favorite teams. So I think Duke is the right team, but I don't necessarily like them at this price, given what's ahead of them in the Final Four.
Well, good luck, everyone, whatever outright ticket they've got going in that event. Shakespeare's come with a baseball play, a Shakespeare guarantee here. San Diego Padres, is that how you pronounce them, to make the playoffs, -115, and also some pizza money on to win the World Series, 28-1. -115 if you like a long-term season bet there for them to make the playoffs. Mate SK, our Sirius double chance and under 3.5. The problem with Sirius, mate, is that there's a lot of questions, probably more question marks about that team than any other in the Swedish league. They could be anything. They could be good. They could be bad. They could be ugly. But I do think, I think if I had to, I think they'll avoid defeat here because Varnamo are not particularly great. Good chance of a draw in that game. A 0-0 is a possibility. But yeah, thank you everyone who joined today on Betting Weekly Live. Tomorrow I'm going to be back with the Maverick. That is Simon Holden. So that should be an interesting show. We've got Premier League. There's not been a Premier League game for about 3 or 4 weeks, has there? But it does return tomorrow. Simon's going to join me on the show. Doug, it was brilliant. You'll be back on Betting Weekly Live at some stage in the next few weeks. Really enjoyed doing these recent shows with you, following the storyline with the March Madness. It's been an absolute pleasure. Best of luck.
Thanks so much, Steve. Always fun to be with you and the team. So thanks for having me as always, and best of luck to everyone out there.
Thanks, everyone. Remember to gamble responsibly, but I'll see you tomorrow on Betting Weekly Live. Until then, take care.